So now we're going to talk about the ninth power of interrelatedness. Just want to say a few words about the title. Interrelatedness or interrelationship, relationship. Another word is actually care. It's kind of obvious that there are all kinds of relationships. And so we're trying to look at one in particular, that of care. But the reason care isn't a way to describe the power in general is that care has become a human word. So you think of care as something to do with between humans, but trying to look at the way the universe in its interrelatedness has something like care at work. That's the whole exploration today. So one thing here is to talk about there is care in the universe. And as before, we have this amazing fact of the universe develops for 13.7 billion years, and there's care at work. So what's this form of care in the human, interrelatedness in the human? How does it show up? What kind of personality really exhibits this? It's a personality or the psyche that is keenly attuned to relatedness, relationship. Just thrills to being related. That's just a rush to be related. Not the idea of creating something, not the idea of judging something, but just being in relationship is the great energy for such a person. And it also is a capacity to identify worth, so that there's just a feeling of great worth in the part of another individual. And also needs, really sensitive to what others need, just able to pick this up so quickly. The negative form of this power is a loss of self. So it's just totally absorbed in the needs and the values of others. And what does such a person need? Centration. So you have to go into different directions from lopsided versions of these powers. But to become overwhelmed by the value of others and to forget the value of yourself is to fall into a submissive or a dependent relationship. And all of these powers can be distorted. That would be the particular way in which this one can be. But the great thing about care is that it can result in true devotion of the highest kind and enables so much to take place. Devotion and service and nurturance. Where would we be without it? Where would the universe be? The whole universe would fall apart without care. I have a story to tell you. As a way to move into the cosmological dynamic of interrelatedness. I was at the California Academy of Sciences at the aquarium, and Bruce Bhakti was showing me around with the fish. And this one moment I was staring in at these fish, and Bruce is describing them, and they're cichlids. And they're, I'm looking at these two big cichlid fish with these little fry. And he says, watch, as soon as another fish of any species comes by, watch what happens. So I watched, and a fish came up, and right away the mom or dad, I couldn't tell the difference. One of them, went like this, and then just scared it away. Then went back over here, just sort of hovered there. Another one came up, scared it away, like nose to nose, and just scared it away. And so I really got into it. I just thought, whoa, here they are, these little baby fish, right? And the mom and dad are hanging there, and just scaring away all the other adults. Now, obviously, I don't know what the mom and dad fish were thinking. I mean, I'm not that tuned in, but what I was overcome by was the fact that they were putting all this energy into it. Now, lots of other fish don't hang around, right? They have the baby fish, and they are out of there. But certain cichlid fish and others they have developed this power, and scientifically it's called parental care. Isn't that a catchy phrase? But they really got that one right. But still, I mean, in other words, the point here is this. Parental care emerged in the universe. There was a time when there wasn't parental care, and then parental care was invented in the universe. I'm not saying by these cichlids. I don't know how far back it goes, but it suddenly it's there. And another amazing thing is that it's valued by the universe. Parental care made more likely the survival of these offspring. So you have this amazing thing. Parental care valued by the universe. This is what we mean by the power of interrelatedness. Valued meaning that natural selection favored these species with parental care enough so that they have survived for hundreds of millions of years. And so then I was sitting there I was really overcome. I was just thinking, whoa, think of parental care operating for 100 million years. It's just sort of kind of overwhelming. Even though I know the fish may not be thinking about it like I am. I don't know what they're thinking, but they're doing it. They're just in there caring, fish caring about their offspring. That's how fish care. That's what they do when they care. That's what they do. And so then I went to this moment of thinking, this is amazing, to the next moment of thinking, so what that I'm sitting here thinking this? I suddenly thought, here's this guy in a dark aquarium having this thought. And it's like, so what, Brian? So I had two thoughts. I had one, it's like, amazing, 100 million years of parental care. And the other is, so what that you're thinking this? I mean, big deal. And then I learned, as I'm looking at this, that many of these species are already extinct in the natural world. They exist only in aquariums. And so then once again I was thrown back into, wow, 100 million years of parental care, right? And even with all that, went extinct, except for these aquariums. And then I went back into how amazing that this envelope of humanity around the planet, this envelope is making this decision about which species will live and which will not live. Incredible. And so this, in other words, the way in which I'm thinking and humans are thinking has an immense importance, has an immense significance, because how we position ourselves within our relationships turns out to be this crucial decision we're making. There are a variety of ways in which we can position ourselves within our relationships. Each of these is an act of the imagination, because we can decide how we might want to relate to various beings. And in our particular society, in industrial society, the dominant paradigm teaches us a particular kind of relationship, and it can be summarized with one word: use. So that our fundamental relationship to other beings is it's a use relationship. And so we have now for hundreds of years attempted to understand how we can use the other components of the earth for the human agenda. It's one particular way. But I just want to point out that is an act of the imagination. We imagine that the other beings are there for our use. There are other possible ways of imagining what the beings are there for. But and what I'm trying to suggest here is a new way. This is a new value to begin to bring into our society. But the dominant paradigm is that of use. And this filters into everything we do. One of the real stunning moments of my life was learning that from Peter Senge at MIT, and learning that the average American is responsible for a ton of waste each week. A ton of waste. Calculate it out. I mean, the part that was so stunning to me was that I didn't know this. And I mean, maybe it's not a well-known fact, but I devote my life to studying this kind of stuff. And I didn't know this, that I was responsible for a ton of waste each week. And so I was thinking about it, and I actually started to calculate how much, waste I'm producing. And it was nothing like a ton. Nothing like a ton. And the reason it adds up to a ton is because Peter Senge is including all of the waste that comes from the manufacturing and extraction processes of the industrial world. If you add those all in, you get to a ton. Wow! And I didn't even know it. Why didn't I know it? Because in the orientation of use, it's not important to know. You regard the world as stuff, it's there for your use, then if you're wasting some of it, it doesn't matter. So it doesn't enter into our consciousness. So all of that is kept unconscious. And in fact, the amount, if we had the most excellent recycling program around, each of us, if we recycled 100%, we would only be affecting 2% of the waste. 98% of the waste takes place without our consciousness, takes place elsewhere. That is what happens when you orient yourself in the universe around this idea that's all there for our use. Right? Now, that particular attitude is imparted throughout our society, in particular in our educational systems. So to get a sense of it, though, you start to see that the imagination of the human is being shaped by all of these different components of our world, our economic system, our manufacturing process, our educational process, all are based on this idea of use. And I have this great quotation, and this comes from a person with a wonderful name, Elmwood Cubberley, and he was the Dean of Education at Stanford. Okay, so here is the Dean of Education at Stanford during the 20th century announcing one of the fundamental values, organizing the educational process. Schools should be factories in which raw products, children, are to be shaped and formed into finished products, manufactured like nails, with the specifications set by industry. That is exactly what you'd want to do, you see, if you had the orientation of use. It's all there for our use. That eventually even the children become products that you can shape in any way you like. What would be another way then to orient ourselves in the midst of our relationships? And this question now of care comes up. And so the suggestion is this. Let's look at the universe and see how it operates and see if we can learn something about how we might enter into relationships. I talked about the fish and the sense of parental care. So there's a kind of a bonded relationship there. The mother and father care about the offspring. Now, this actually develops. Fish, come forth hundreds of millions of years ago, and they evolve into the amphibians, and they evolve into the reptiles. And when you get to the reptiles, you have the same relationship between the parents and the offspring. So, I don't know if that's an independent discovery on the part of the reptiles, or if actually that power actually carried all the way through these lineages. Either way, it's remarkable, because it's a fundamental power of the universe. Mother and father reptiles, mother reptiles, care about their offspring to this extent that they will hang around the eggs and make sure they hatch. That's better than the frogs, right? That's an improvement over the frogs. The frogs fertilize the eggs and then just let them go. But the reptiles hang around there. And then when the babies are born, they don't consume them. which is better than some of the fish. With some of the fish, as soon as the babies are born, they just turn, they become food instantly. But again, the reptiles, they actually, they care enough to hold back on that ferocious need to consume them. But their connection to their offspring is easily broken, in the sense of if the mother gets confused or separated after a certain period of time, it breaks down into the attitude of they're fair game for the next meal. So that's unfortunate. But from our point of view, it's unfortunate from our point of view as mammals, because again, this amazing power of care deepens when you come to the mammals. And the care for a mother mammal for her offspring will last throughout a lifetime, can last throughout a lifetime, way beyond the period of nurturance where the offspring really do need, food and sustenance, which is often the case with humans as well. They hang around forever. But that's a good thing. But I mean, you can see this extension into the mammalian world. I mean, wow, what is this? This is, again, the universe showing what it values. It values parental care because it shows that it values parental care, because it enables the mammals to spread out. And then, so this would all be the way in which care shows up between the mother and the offspring. But I also want to talk about the care that shows up between the generations around sexual choice. This is amazing. Why would a mother, a female bother evaluating her suitors? Say you're a monkey, or you're a rhinoceros, or you're an antelope, or you're an elk. Why would you bother? Why put energy into paying attention to the males that present and display? And that from that display, choose one. So we have a way of saying it. We say the female has developed to choose those males that have the highest chance of enabling their offspring to survive. The sexual selection. It's an immensely important part of life. So the way to say this is that the females care about their offspring's survival enough to choose correctly at the level of the male display. Now, when I say they care, I don't know if they get together and compare notes. I mean, like the elk. Well, what'd you think of him? And I like this guy. And I mean, honestly, I'm not trying to impute more than I know. I don't know individually what they're experiencing. So I'm trying to forestall being criticized of anthropomorphism here. But the dynamic is what I want to focus our attention on. That the females care in that sense of they attend to the situation in a way that shows the effect on the next generation. The care is built in to the dynamic of life. It's just so amazing. It's not about the individual. The way they're living their life is about the next generation in terms of this decision. So you see, it's the universe working to extend care. And the word care has to be understood as a multivalent, multi-level word. It relates to different levels in different ways. Here's one of my favorite facts about all of this, and that is Barbara Smuts is a primatologist at University of Michigan, and she's lived with baboons. She's short and cute, and she looks like a baboon. After a while, they just thought she was a baboon. It took a while, but she just came across as baboon-like, and the amazing experiences she had hanging with them, just sort of wandering around. Well, one I can't help but tell you is that one time she was with them, and they all took a nap, like they do in the afternoon, and then when they woke up, they didn't know where to go. Here's the funny thing is, she knew where they wanted to go. She'd been with them for 2 years. So at this part of their day, they usually go to this spot, but they were confused, And it was such an interesting experience. She was with wild animals that didn't quite know where they wanted to go, but she knew, all right? And she wasn't going to tell them. So I guess they actually took another nap, and when they woke up, they had it all figured out. So anyway, but I mean, one of her great studies though is she carefully kept track of female choice with mating, And there are different categories, values, but one of them was tenderness. That the female baboons, there's a high probability that given two different males, they would choose the tender male. Now you have to think about what that means. That means that the tenderness of the male partner is now folded into the DNA of the baboon world. So that generation after generation, tenderness becomes ever more a part of the baboon world. I just find that so remarkable. Again, the way in which life is seeking to deepen and extend this power of care. Now we move to this question of interrelatedness, the power of interrelatedness with the human world. And we return, as I mentioned before, to this question of imagination. What's interesting is that the movement into the planetary human, or the movement into the way in which these cosmological powers can furl through the human is a delicate process because it involves the imagination. And the one example that really made it clear to me was when we discovered, humans discovered in 1965, the background radiation of the universe. Okay? Robert Wilson, Arno Penzias, and these two guys, Bell Labs, they have their telescope, right? And there they are in the room listening to this. Here's the sound they heard. And so I wasn't actually there. I've never talked to them about this, all right? But so I just sort of make this up a little bit. This is what took place. One of them said, "My God, we're listening to the photons from the birth of the universe. Incredible. These are the photons from the very birth of the universe. We're hearing them for the first time. Unbelievable." And one of them went out and looked at the telescope and saw some pigeon droppings on it and returned and said, the same sound. I don't think so. I think we're hearing the effect of the pigeon droppings on the telescope. So just imagine this moment. Wait, am I hearing the birth of the universe? Oh, wait, am I hearing pigeon droppings? Birth of the universe? No, pigeon droppings. I mean, like it couldn't be more different. And they're going back and forth like this. They didn't know what it was. So they went and scrubbed it off, all right? And then they went back and they heard the same sound. And so they started to realize, whoa, this really is the birth of the universe we're hearing. But it's that delicacy, you see, of not really knowing what is there. And this, it's the power of the imagination. It's the power we have to get in touch with something that is subtle and ancient and not obvious. So it's this challenge. One way I like to think about this movement of the imagination is to think in terms of the way in which the mother sea lion establishes its relationship with its pup. This is true of many mammals, but the mother sea lion has to go through a process. It involves licking and nuzzling and so forth. But the mother sea lion evokes its own motherhood through this process. This is well understood in science. The different areas of the DNA require a so-called activating mechanism, releasing mechanism, so that it's kind of like a ritual that's necessary for the animal to go through. But once the sea lion goes through this process, she becomes mother. And it's the activation of this deep dimension of care. Care itself, then, has to be evoked. And if that isn't evoked, the mother sea lion doesn't regard the pup as like her own and to care for her and so forth. And that, I think, is exactly the same thing for the human. We we are in that moment when we need to find ways to activate these deep powers, these cosmic powers, so we can enter into a richer and deeper relationship with the universe. And this process then of activation involves, among other things, the imagination. An image I like just to think about this is just to think of this point. The universe at one time was all elementary particles. Just imagine the universe just being electrons and protons. Then a process took place that eventuated in these cichlid fish caring for one another. All right? In other words, the power of care is evoked out of the plasma from the early universe. This is the power of transformation we're talking about. But here we have nurturance or care evoked in the universe. How do we enter into that process of evoking care and nurturance? That's the challenge. The universe has done an amazing job. It brought it forth out of electrons and protons. So it's there in the universe. Just to become aware of it is already to participate in its activation. Let me give you another image, though. Imagine this. The color red. 2 billion years ago on the planet Earth. The color red. There was not one eye on the Earth 2 billion years ago. Lots of life, great life, intelligent life, capable of doing all sorts of things. But there was no experience of the color red. So redness as part of the inner world didn't exist. And then an eye was created, enabling red to be fully activated within a particular sentient being. Our task is similar. There's this power of care throughout the universe. And the task of the human is actually to activate the sensibility that can feel it. That's the process, that's the initiation that we're called upon right now to participate in. How can we actually bring forth an awareness of the nurturance and the care that's already at work in the universe? Two more ideas. The amazing capacity of the human in terms of care has to do with the extension of human subjectivity. That's the capacity that we have that is seemingly new. What do I mean by that? I talked about the cichlid fish and how they kept away the other fish from eating their young. All right. If there's some other fry over here from a different species, they have no concern about that. They're not going to go protect those other species. It's just not their thing. And I talked about this amazing thing the mammals have, right? The mother mammal in touch with the offspring, right? Even a different species of mammal, the mother doesn't really care about those other. So that you have this power of life extending its care through DNA and encoding it through DNA, extending it through up to a certain point. And we've entered into that now. But we have an amazing ability. It's just so new and so powerful. It is the power of experiencing from another perspective. It's the power that language and conscious self-awareness provides for us. We can actually experience what it's like to be someone else. We can work our way into empathy, and we can attune to those suffering cries, and we can begin to experience the world from that perspective. That is the explosion of care that takes place with the human, that can take place with the human. And this is one of the most powerful effects or meanings of art. It is the power of, and through the work of symbols and language, to begin to actually occupy another form of consciousness. And we have, through history, we have extended care beyond our local group, right? Even to other races, right? And then even to, unbelievable, other species. You see, we have that, and we don't have to rely upon the change at the genetic level. We actually have this ability to move outside of our own locked-in perspective. We talked about this in The Power of Allurement. It's one of the most amazing powers that the human has, and this idea of deepening compassion. So, what is a way to think about this as a whole, involving the imagination? I just wanted to visit the sense of the universe expanding one last time. You have the universe expanding. I mentioned when talking about transformation that the shock is the universe arrived at life so quickly. Well, another way to say it is that if you look at the expansion of the universe is expanding at just the rate that will lead to life. Just the rate. A little bit slower, you wouldn't have life. A little bit faster, you wouldn't have life. You wouldn't get to life. We just happen to be at the rate that leads to life. Now, those are the facts. Then we have an understanding of them. And that's when we move into interpretation, imagination, paradigm, cosmology. This is where the human imagination really enters in. Here is an interpretation. The universe is expanding at just at the rate to give to life. What's the interpretation? No meaning there whatsoever. Happenstance, coincidence. That's the interpretation that comes from the worldview of use. Do you see how it fits in there? Use assumes that things don't have meaning in and of themselves. Their meaning comes from how they enter into our manufacturing process. That's the use paradigm. So it's just, okay, it's expanded at the way it gives to life. There's no meaning there whatsoever. Here is the interpretation that is also possible. Here's the interpretation. The universe expands at the rate that leads to life because the universe cares about life. Now, care here is different than the care of a fish. It's different than the care of a human. It's now a cosmological care. That there's a way in which care is built in from the very beginning of the universe. Care or nurturance. Okay? Hold it. There's a criticism of that interpretation. Here's the criticism. You are using the idea of care, or even this. You're using the idea of the Great Mother to interpret the universe. Right? So you have the idea in your head, Great Mother, and you're using that to interpret a meaningless universe. That would be the use criticism of that interpretation. And here's the answer. Right? The answer is this. The cosmological power of interrelatedness, the cosmological power of care, right, is using the symbol of Great Mother in a human to reflect upon itself. You know, the cosmological power of care has organized things and is now employing the symbol of the Great Mother in order to reflect upon its own nature. So the power of care is reflecting upon the power of care through the human. Another more traditional way of saying is this. The I, which we are using to regard care, that I, we're using this I, to regard care in the universe. That's the same I that care is using to regard itself. So it is it's an interpretation, it's an understanding that sees care as pervasive in the universe from the beginning, and looking for moments when it can amplify. That's the great thing about the mammals. Care amplifies. And then we come to our moment. Very early on, I stated that one way to understand the human is that anatomically the human is just another primate species. But in terms of our mental and spiritual capacities, we are a new phylum. If anything like that is even approximately true, then this new phylum is in search of its role. We've tried different things. We've tried extreme militarism and consumerism. It just leads to the withering of the planet. It's possible that the role of the human is to provide the vessel for a comprehensive care to come forth in the universe. It's possible that care is seeking to expand out into a comprehensive role on this planet, and that the space in which this will take place is with the human.